The table was dressed like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Ivory napkins folded into crisp peaks, gold-rimmed plates, catching the light just so, and a centerpiece of pine cones and eucalyptus that Lisa said she threw together in 5 minutes. Cleo beamed every time Lisa spoke, nodding like a student hoping to be picked for a prize. Lisa passed around slices of her lemon tart, delicately praising the tartness, the crust, the balance. "It's all about proportion," she said, dabbing at her mouth with her napkin. "Too much zest and you lose the elegance." Eli leaned back, glanced across the table and chuckled. "Mom, you should ask Lisa for some tips. You'd love her kitchen double ovens marble island. You'd go crazy in there." I smiled. Just a slight one. I didn't say I already have a kitchen I love. I didn't mention that I remodeled it myself after saving up for 5 years and doing the painting alone in the evenings after client calls. Lisa laughed politely, not unkindly. "Oh, I'm sure Maris has her own ways. Everyone has their rhythm." Eli didn't stop. "Yeah, but come on, Mom. When will you be more like Lisa Cleo froze mid-bite?" Winona looked down at her water. Lisa's hand paused on her fork, not quite sure whether to smile again. I didn't blink. I just reached for my tea, brought it to my lips, and took a slow sip. The lemon in it was faint, clean, a little bitter. No one noticed how still my hands were, or how long it took me to set the cup back down. Eli moved on, talking about new upgrades to the guest bathroom. Cleo relaxed again. Lisa said something about powder blue tiles. The moment passed. But it stayed with me, because there was a time years ago when Lisa wasn't just someone admired across a dinner table. She wasn't just a name that floated into conversations like a standard I'd failed to meet. She was more than that. Much more. She was the reason I lost everything, and the reason I had to build it all again. I folded my napkin slowly and placed it in my lap, steadying my breath as Lisa launched into a story about Provence. Let them talk. I remembered the before, and I remembered the silence that followed. Lisa always knew how to fill a room, never too loud, never too modest, always walking the fine line of admiration, without envy. That was her gift. She could compliment your blouse while reminding you hers was handmade in Florence. She'd ask about your garden, and then casually mention the landscaper she flew in from Charleston. No one seemed to notice, but I always did. Cleo hung on her every word. "Your table setting is stunning," she said, as Lisa adjusted a cinnamon stick on a cloth napkin. "You make it look effortless." Lisa offered her usual half-laugh. "Oh, it's just something I picked up in Napa. Presentation's everything right." Right. I watched Eli nod along. He looked proud, like his marriage had somehow earned him a better mother, as if Lisa's refinement washed over the whole family by extension. But I knew better. I had known her longer, before the French linens and herb gardens, before she became the Chadwick Ford matriarch with perfect posture and a retirement home in Savannah. Before any of it, Lisa was a name I tried not to say out loud. We were in the same class at university. I was on scholarship working weekends. She was studying decorative arts, planning a wedding. Mine. Derek and I had been engaged 9 months. We had a deposit on a venue, a photographer, and invitations ordered. I still remember the font lavender script on ivory cardstock. Lisa had admired them once, said they were clean and classic. 2 months before the ceremony, he ended it. No explanation, just a clipped conversation and silence. A week later, I saw them together at the lake, holding hands. She wore the bracelet I gave him for Christmas. He looked away. She didn't. They married in spring. She wore lace and lilies. I left town. No one at this table knows that story. Not Eli. Not Cleo. Certainly not Lisa, who now folds her napkin the same exact way she did the night I lost him. I pressed my fingers against the rim of my glass, grounding myself in the present. Listening to Lisa describe her first trip to Santorini, Winona caught my eye briefly. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Some truths live quietly for decades, not out of fear, but restraint. Because some victories don't come from reclaiming the past. They come from knowing you survived it. And some dinners are just preludes to remembering why. I was 27 when Derek proposed. He wasn't extraordinary, but he was steady. We met at a library gala, both of us pretending to enjoy the poetry reading. He liked that I didn't mind his silences. I liked that he noticed when I was cold and offered his coat without a word. We planned a modest ceremony. Nothing grand, just simple and ours. I picked lilies over roses. He nodded like he cared. Back then, I thought that meant love. Lisa floated into our lives during the final months of planning. She was Derek's friend's sister. A little much, I'd whispered after our first dinner. Too polished, too perfectly amused by everything Derek said. He brushed it off. "You're the one I'm marrying," he said, kissing my forehead. 2 months before the wedding, he stopped showing up to fittings, claimed work was piling up. Then one Sunday, he asked to meet in the parking lot of the co-op where we'd registered. He didn't sit down. He didn't apologize. He just said he couldn't do it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of him. I nodded, walked away, and vomited in the stall of a bakery down the block. A week later, someone mailed me a picture, clipped from the society section of the paper. Lisa and Derek smiling at a charity event, her hand resting on his chest. My engagement bracelet wrapped around her wrist. She got the ring. I got the silence. There was no confrontation, no public fallout. I packed what I had left the city and didn't tell anyone where I went. I changed jobs, dyed my hair darker, and built a life far enough away that no one connected me to the girl who almost married Derek Chadwick. When Eli was born, I held him against my chest and promised myself he'd never grow up with that weight. I raised him on my own after his father died, and I never once whispered Lisa's name. But sometimes, when he laughs like Derek tilts his head the same way, I wonder, maybe you can erase someone from your life, but not from your blood. His name was Matthew Rowan. He taught high school history and kept spare chalk in his jacket pocket. We met at a community book drive, both reaching for the same worn copy of Baldwin. He smiled and stepped back. "You first," he said. I told him we could share it. Matthew wasn't flashy. He didn't charm rooms or quote poetry, but he listened deeply. When I told him I didn't believe in forever anymore, he said, "Maybe we don't need forever. Just enough time to mean something." We were married the next spring. Small ceremony, backyard. Just a few folding chairs and a lemon tree in bloom. When Eli was born, Matthew cried before I did. Called him a miracle, like he'd never expected anything so good to belong to him. He held him like he was breakable and sacred all at once. For 5 years, our house was quiet and full. And then, one evening, on his way to a school board meeting, the phone rang. There was black ice. A guardrail that gave too easily. A police officer who wouldn't look me in the eye. I remember staring at Matthew's mug on the counter, steam still rising from tea he never finished. After the funeral, I sold my wedding ring. Not out of grief, but necessity. Rent was due. Eli needed shoes. I still had 3 months left on maternity leave and no more husband to lean on. So I did what I knew. I opened a ledger, took on small clients, typed invoices late into the night, built a business from a folding table and a secondhand laptop. I raised Eli alone. I never asked for help. I didn't whine about the things we didn't have. I budgeted, planned, and made everything stretch without making it feel small. He never knew what I gave up, so he wouldn't have to. And I never asked him to. We never had granite countertops or imported tiles. Our floors creaked, and the cabinets were the same ones Matthew built before Eli could walk. But the house stayed warm in winter, cool in summer, and safe in every season. I didn't post renovation updates or kitchen selfies. I painted the porch myself in sections 1 plank a night after Eli went to bed. I caulked windows, learned to patch drywall, and taught myself how to grow basil from cuttings. Eli never asked how the mortgage disappeared. He just assumed it was handled. "You're lucky the house is paid off," he'd say, without knowing the 13 years it took me to chip away at the principal, every bonus check, every side client, every moment I chose homemade over convenient. He thought I had just enough to stay afloat, just enough to keep the lights on, just enough to not worry. He didn't know I built a reserve account the year he turned 10, and I quietly paid off his first semester of college before he even chose a school. He didn't ask, and I didn't offer. Every other Friday, I meet with 3 single mothers at the community center. We talk taxes, budgeting, pricing strategies. They bring their babies. I bring muffins and spreadsheets. No one knows. I don't advertise it. I don't need to. I grow tomatoes, thyme, and snap peas in raised beds behind the house. I swap herbs with my neighbor for her sourdough starter. The little girls across the street wave at me like I'm someone safe. There's no marble here, but there's peace. But sometimes I walk through the hall and touch the walls, not because they're beautiful, but because they held me when no one else did. I don't need the house to shine. I just need it to last. And it has. The email came on a Tuesday evening. Subject line: Thanksgiving plans. Eli always kept things short. Cleo probably drafted the invite she liked. Structure headings suggested arrival times. There was even a link to the menu: herb roasted turkey, maple carrots, Lisa's lemon tart. I stared at the screen for a long time. The cursor blinked like it had something to say. I could have said no. I'd done it before last year and the one before that, each time with an excuse that felt polite enough to mask the truth. Deadlines, migraine, flu. It was easier than saying I didn't want to be a prop at my own son's table. Lisa would be there, of course, likely in cream cashmere, offering some thoughtful hostess gift. Eli would ask her about her new flooring or latest travel, and I'd sit across from them, counted, but not seen. I hovered over decline. My thumb hesitated. I'm tired of being tolerated. I said it out loud just once to the quiet of my kitchen. Then I clicked. Yes. Not because I needed anyone to notice me. Not because I thought this dinner would be different. I clicked yes because I was done pretending to be unaffected, done letting the silence between me and my son define everything we hadn't said. This wasn't a performance. I wasn't going for closure. I wasn't going to throw the past across the table like a broken plate. I was going because sometimes the only way to end the story is to finally turn the last page yourself. The table was full of silverware, curated charm, and invisible rules. Lisa told a story about a vineyard in Sonoma. Cleo laughed at all the right moments. Eli nodded like he knew wine. I passed the rolls. Dessert came. Lisa's lemon tart, of course. Eli sliced it carefully and made a joke about precision and perfection, handing out plates like he was dividing a small treasure. He looked at me as he slid mine in front of me. "When will you be more like Lisa?" he said, half laughing, half serious. It was too easy for him, a reflex like scratching an old scar that had long stopped bleeding. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I lifted my cup instead and took a sip of tea, oolong strong with a slice of lemon floating inside. The warmth hit the back of my throat and settled deep in my chest. "I did," I said quietly, setting the cup down. "Paid in full, no mortgage." Forks froze midair. Lisa blinked. Cleo's eyes darted toward Eli, waiting for his cue. Winona looked straight at me, lips still. Eli gave a short, nervous laugh. "Wait, seriously?" I nodded. "Last year. All mine. No cosigner. No debt." The clink of cutlery stopped altogether. Even the jazz in the background seemed to quiet. Lisa adjusted her napkin. "That's Quite the accomplishment. I looked at her steady. Thank you. Cleo spoke next. You never mentioned buying a house. I wasn't asked. Eli opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked suddenly younger. Not in age, but in understanding. Like he was realizing something too late. I took another sip of tea. Still warm. The tart on my plate remained untouched. I wasn't hungry anymore. Not for sugar. Not for praise. Just for air clean and free of expectation. They had written me into the background for so long they forgot I had a pen too. And tonight I used it. They tried to move on. Cleo asked Lisa where she bought her earrings. Eli reached for the water pitcher. But the air had shifted stiff now, like a stage set no one remembered how to perform on. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I just spoke. You praised the one who borrowed. I said, eyes on Eli, and ignored the one who built. He looked stunned. Not hurt. Not angry. Just stunned, like I had spoken a language he didn't realize I knew. I own my home. I run my business. No debt. No favors. Just me. No one said anything. And Lisa, I added, turning just slightly toward her, once married my fiancé. A beat of silence. Then another. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to fall away. Lisa's hand hovered over her glass. She didn't deny it. Just sat still, lips pressed into a shape that wasn't quite regret, but not pride either. Cleo blinked fast. Wait, Derek. I nodded. Eli stared at the table. You never said anything. You never asked. Lisa finally spoke. That was a lifetime ago. Yes, I said. Mine. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. Let them connect the dots. Let them remember every time they held Lisa up like a polished gem and wondered why I didn't shine the same way. Let them feel the weight of what they never knew. Cleo shifted in her seat. Winona across from me gave the smallest nod, quiet understanding, in the creases around her eyes. Eli tried to speak, then stopped. It wasn't about blame. It was about truth. And once spoken, truth doesn't wait for applause. It just stands there, quietly undoing the story you thought you knew. No one moved. The table, once buzzing with polite laughter and layered conversations, sat still beneath the weight of something too real to ignore. Lisa kept her eyes low. She didn't deny it. Not once. And that somehow felt louder than any defense. Cleo looked like she was sorting puzzle pieces that didn't fit. Her mouth parted slightly, but no words came out. Maybe she didn't know who to defend. Maybe she realized she didn't have to. Eli stared down at his plate, jaw tight, hands motionless. For all his questions, all the times he asked me to be someone else now that he was faced with who I actually was, he had nothing left to say. I never wanted applause, I said, voice even. I just wanted to stop being erased. No one interrupted me. No one protested. I looked around at the home I didn't build, at the walls filled with photos I didn't appear in, at the faces that once scanned past me like background furniture. And I understood something I hadn't allowed myself to name before. This wasn't rejection. This wasn't loss. This was recognition of the quiet truth I'd carried for years, now finally set down. I folded my napkins, slow and deliberate. The chair creaked as I stood. I think I'll head out, I said. Winona made a soft sound, almost a breath. Eli lifted his head, but didn't reach for me. Cleo blinked fast, then looked away. Lisa stayed silent. I didn't wait for permission. I didn't explain. I walked toward the front door past the hallway with the framed photos of perfect moments. My footsteps were soft, but steady. Somewhere behind me, someone picked up a fork. The noise was small, forgettable, but the chair I left behind stayed empty. The road home was darker than usual, but it didn't feel lonely. The headlights lit up patches of frost on the shoulder, quiet reminders of the season shifting. I kept the radio off. I didn't need noise. I had everything I needed sitting in the silence between one breath and the next. There were no tears. No weight pressing down on my chest. just a stillness I hadn't felt in years. Not the stillness of being silenced, but the kind that comes after finally telling the truth. At home, I didn't kick off my shoes. I moved slowly, deliberately. I brewed a cup of tea not because I needed comfort, but because it felt like ritual, a quiet closing of something long left open. Then I sat at my kitchen table and pulled out a sheet of paper. Not for Eli, not for anyone else, just for me. I wrote, "You weren't invisible. They were just looking in the wrong direction. You didn't need to shine louder. You only needed to stop waiting to be seen." I folded the note and tucked it into the drawer where I keep extra seeds and garden gloves. Later, I went out to the yard. The moon was bright enough to work by. I dug into the soil beside the rosemary and pressed down cloves of garlic, one by one, setting them beneath the earth like quiet promises. They won't sprout for months, but I'll wait. Growth is never loud. It doesn't need to be. Back inside, I washed the dirt from my hands and stood at the sink, letting the warm water run over my skin until it faded back to its natural temperature. Then I turned off the faucet, dried my hands, and breathed. Not because I had to, but because for the first time in a long time, I finally could.